Ever thought why some kids find English exams to be a mountain too steep to climb? It's a question that has puzzled many. English, as simple as it may seem, can be a labyrinth for young minds. The twists and turns of its grammar, the maze of its vocabulary, and the high walls of its syntax can make it an uphill battle for students. Some kids grapple with the labyrinth of complex words, often feeling lost in their meanings and usage. They stumble upon the twists and turns of forming grammatically correct sentences, struggling to string together words in a way that makes sense. It's not just about memorizing words or rules, it's about understanding them, applying them, and making them a part of your linguistic toolbox. It's about navigating through the labyrinth, taking the twists and turns in stride, and finally reaching the peak of the mountain. Let's dive into a conversation between a teacher and a student to shed some light on this. In a quiet classroom, a conversation sparks between a concerned teacher and her struggling student. The air is pregnant with anticipation as the teacher gently broaches the subject. "I've noticed you're having some trouble with English. Can you tell me what you're finding difficult?" The student, a bit hesitant at first, starts to open up about his struggles. "I just don't get it," he admits, his voice a mix of frustration and defeat. "Some words are too hard and I can't seem to put sentences together right." It's a common concern among learners, one that echoes in classrooms around the globe. The teacher, empathetic, nods her head, understanding the student's turmoil. She takes a moment, then responds. "It's okay to find it challenging. English is a rich language with a vast vocabulary and varied sentence structures. But don't worry, we'll tackle this together." Her words, filled with reassurance, light a glimmer of hope in the student's eyes. She goes on to explain, complex words are just like puzzles. Once you know the pieces, they're easier to understand. And sentence structure? Think of it like building blocks. Once you know where each block goes, building becomes a breeze. The teacher's analogies, simple yet effective, bring a sense of clarity to the student. He begins to see that his struggles are not unique, they're part of the learning process. And with guidance, he can overcome them. "Remember," the teacher adds, her voice soft yet firm, "learning is a journey, not a race. It's okay to stumble, to fall. What's important is that you pick yourself up and keep going." Her words, filled with wisdom, resonate with the student, instilling in him a newfound determination. And just like that, a simple conversation becomes a turning point, a beacon of hope for a struggling learner. The teacher, understanding his problem, starts to unravel the ways to overcome these hurdles. And so, the journey to mastering English begins, one word, one sentence at a time. Complex words, a common stumbling block, but not an insurmountable one. Let's dive into the world of these tricky terms that often seem like puzzles waiting to be solved. Often the complexity of a word lies not in its concept, but in its structure. You see, many words in the English language are like little pieces of architecture built from smaller, simpler parts. These parts, known as roots, prefixes, and suffixes, each carry a meaning of their own. By understanding these components, we can start to decode the larger, more complex word. Let's take the word unhappiness, for instance. It may seem daunting at first, but let's break it down. The root word here is happy. It's a term we're all familiar with, right? Now, un is a prefix that means not, and ness is a suffix that turns an adjective into a noun. So when we piece it all together, unhappiness simply means the state of not being happy. See, not so scary after all. Now let's try another example, misunderstanding. The root word in this case is understand. The prefix mis implies a wrong or bad action, and the suffix ing indicates an ongoing action. Therefore, misunderstanding refers to the ongoing action of understanding something incorrectly. By breaking down these complex words into their simpler parts, we can make sense of their meaning, even if we've never encountered them before. It's like having a secret code book to the English language. Our student, initially overwhelmed, starts to grasp this concept. Bit by bit, the once intimidating complex words start to unravel. They begin to see that each complex word is just a puzzle, and with the right tools, they can solve it. Through this process, the student learns that understanding complex words is less about memorization and more about exploration and discovery. It's a journey into the heart of language, revealing the rich tapestry of meanings that lie within each word. With practice, the student begins to see that complex words are not so intimidating after all. Next up, forming sentences. Sounds easy, right? Let's explore. When it comes to structuring sentences, there are a few golden rules to remember. The first rule is that a sentence needs a subject, a verb, and often an object. The subject is the doer of the action, the verb is the action itself, and the object is the receiver of the action. For example, in the sentence, the cat chased the mouse, the cat is the subject, chased is the verb, and the mouse is the object. The second rule is to keep your sentences concise. When you can say something in fewer words, do it. It helps to keep your listener or reader engaged and prevents confusion. For example, instead of saying, "The tree that is in my backyard that is very tall and has lots of leaves," you could say, "The tall tree in my backyard has lots of leaves." It's the same idea, but much easier to understand. The third rule is to vary your sentence length. If all your sentences are short, it can sound choppy. If they're all long, it can be hard to follow. Mix it up. Use short sentences for impact and longer ones to explain or describe. Now let's see how our student applies these rules. Listen to their enthusiasm as they begin to experiment with sentence structure. The dog barked. A simple sentence, but it's got a subject, a verb, and it's concise. My sister and I played in the park until the sunset. A longer sentence, but still clear and easy to follow. With practice, our student starts to feel more confident. They're not just forming sentences anymore, they're telling stories. My best friend moved away last year. I was sad at first, but we still talk every day. See how they've used a combination of short and long sentences to express a complex emotion? That's the power of well-structured sentences. As the student practices, the once daunting task of sentence formation becomes much more manageable. And that's the key, isn't it? Practice, practice, and practice some more. Remember, every great writer started with simple sentences just like these. You're in good company. Now let's keep practicing. The journey to mastering English is not a sprint, but a marathon. Just as a marathon runner doesn't prepare for the race overnight, language learning requires time and consistent effort.